Okay, we're out in the alley again with another 70 Ram Air 4 Judge convertible. This is level 1 restoration behind the scenes. Today we have a pepper green 4-speed and really an awesome car. It has a really good restoration that's holding up well. This customer has yet another one of these cars. He has a red on red one, which we'll have coming up here in the next few weeks. But this car is actually from Colorado, which is pretty cool. So we have the invoice and a factory build sheet on this car we'll take a look at in a little bit. It was from a little town on the Eastern Plains called La Junta, Colorado. And it's a tiny little town. I mean, it's amazing that this car came from that place. And then from what I know, the car went up into Wyoming, and maybe it was discovered up there. But the really great thing about this car, if you're looking at maybe 12 or so Ram Air 4 Judge convertibles that exist for 1970, this car has an exceptionally clean body. I mean, they never use salt out there. It is so dry out on the Eastern Plains here of Colorado. It's just amazing. So this car has and has always had a beautiful rust-free body. And the pepper green, I just love this color combination so much that I've been around it that I don't know that I would pay much of a premium for another color, really, quite honestly. It's very good. I would be really good with this car based on the fact that the body is so good and it has a lot of new old stock parts in its restoration. And we'll take a look all around this car under the hood and in the engine compartment and all that stuff. A couple of things jump out right away. We already have the parts in hand, but we couldn't get them taken care of before we were doing this video, but that's almost better. So this car, like I mentioned before, has a lot of new old stock parts. Well, this fan shroud is a new old stock part, except they didn't service the correct 70 shroud. So we have acquired a 70 shroud. There's a little piece missing here on the new old stock shrouds that people were buying. And so we'll correct the fan shroud. We'll correct the radiator hoses. So we'll put like a new old stock style hose on there. The master cylinder body should be black. That was like Parkerized. It was just a process for blackening things. It's really not a debate on these GM cars. The master cylinder was black, period. The rest of the under engine compartment here is really pretty nice. There are just a couple of tiny little details that when this car got restored, people weren't doing yet. So very typical, something we see all the time, but the shroud, the hoses, the master cylinder, we are gonna put an original oil sender on it as well. But other than that, it's still a very nice car, and you know, a wonderful car like this, you don't always get this. The frame is just beautiful in its condition, and the inner fender wells and radiator support, all that stuff is just real to this car, and it really shows. So really great car. Taking a look at the outside of this car here, one of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna put this wire-on piece on. We'll get a new one, and we're going to bring it around the corner like it would have been from the factory. And it has a different cap also that we have for it. It's kind of nice that it already has a crush binding here. So by the time we do the correct wire on and a new header piece up here, this will be a really great top. And I don't know if it will show or not, but we're just in the middle of polishing this car and detailing it. So there's still some swirl marks and a few things in it, but here's a door edge guard. Is a really cool option on these cars, and as you can see, it has a green upholstery, green on green, which man, it isn't good on paper initially when you hear it, but in person it really works out. I would be proud to call this one of mine. Also on this car, on the exterior, just a couple little things we'll take care of. The door lock cylinders here, this is an aftermarket one. We're going to rekey originals and get original locks back in it. We'll put new old stock lug nuts on it. And I think we're going to maybe change the exhaust tips on this car. But other than that, it didn't need a whole lot to have it ready for judging. And this car, along with all the other judges, I think there's 6 in total, convertibles, we're going to take out to the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. Okay, let's take a look at the original invoice for this car, or a lot of people know this as a PHS document, but what it really is it's a copy of the original invoice for this car. So when Pontiac invoiced the dealer, which we talked about being in La Junta, Colorado, Huggins Motor Gas and Leasing Company. So this might not even really have been a big dealership. Certainly wasn't a big dealership, but it could have just been a small place that had a retail license to sell new cars back in the day. I would love to get out there and research that, and certainly if anyone knows anything about it, I'd love to hear from you. But let's take a look at the options really quick. It has pretty cool options. The Judge, of course, 4-speed close ratio, G7014s, white letter, remote mirror, rally gauge cluster, and tack, so it's a hood tack, console, power disc brakes, front and rear mats, Ram Air 4 engine, safety track heavy duty, the radio push button, steering wheel formula, which is pretty cool. There's that hood tack, power steering variable ratio, mats, floor, front and rear, glass soft tray, windshield only, and door edge guards. So it had a suggested retail price of $4,168. And we can see that it has a date here, 4/28 of 70. So that's when they invoiced it, and I'm sure it hit the dealer just a little bit after that. But here's a really cool additional piece of documentation, which you always love to have, and this is a build sheet. So you can see here that this was on the floor of the car, and the flat wire harness strip ran right over this. So this was down on the floor before the wire harness was in place. So what's interesting about this is that it's different from the invoice, so there's more things here. So for example, some of the things that were on here were standard on a GTO, but they were building all different types of cars at this Fremont assembly plant in California. So one of the things I noticed was the canceling wipers, where the wipers would go below the hood level. Well, that was just a standard thing on a GTO. And that, like say, the power top also would just be standard on a GTO. But they needed to know to do all this stuff, because I guess it was in the body plant. It could have been a Tempest that wouldn't have those things standard. But it's pretty cool. It calls out the transmission here, M21. It says simulated leather seats. And it has a 390 axle ratio here. So really quite a lot more information on a build sheet than you would just have on the invoice. Another thing that's really neat about this is it has all the codes. So if you've been to a car show and you see an alternator with an ink stamp on it, well, this is what it refers to right here. So the alternator on this car has a 2-letter PIC code of XC. So they would know that helped the plant worker grab the right parts for this particular car. So the axle code would be on there, the transmission code. Here's the engine code, WW. All the Pontiac guys are familiar with that, Ram Air 4 4-speed code. And just all the way throughout here, even here, this one is a radiator hose, NL. You see that all the time. So a lot of the really good aftermarket parts places like Ames, Inline Tube, some of those guys, they've done a really good job of making a lot of these stamps and parts with these codes on them, or making this information available. So that's really been great. But that's where this type of information came from. All right, hey, thanks for watching our videos here, our Level 1 Restoration Behind the Scenes, or Restoration BS for short. And we really appreciate your support. If you like these videos, please subscribe and stay tuned for more cool restoration videos.